To continue to deliberate would be futile and only serve to force us to compromise these deeply held beliefs. I'm not going to do that to you folks. Your service is complete. I'm declaring a mistrial in this case. I'll be in to see you privately in a few minutes. So thank you so much for your service.
That was the end of round one in the Karen Read saga. Round two, the retrial is fast approaching in April. The polarizing defendant still believes that she was framed and is not backing down from those claims. Charged with second-degree murder of her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe, Reed made many more statements in a new interview with Boston 25 News.
I'm not afraid of taking the stand, and I'm clearly not afraid of speaking, but they're playing hardball. So we'll weigh the pros and cons, and we'll make another second game time decision.
Who would you rather face? Is it Adam Lally, who we saw in the first trial, or is it Hank Brennan?
I don't care who I face. I have the truth. I have the best attorneys. Do your worst.
Reed, you heard her say she's not afraid to take the stand. She's very involved in her defense. That is very clear. And she talks about it in this interview, how, you know, if some discovery comes in, boom, they're all in. They divide and conquer. She is as involved in a defense as you could be. She also had this to say in this interview with Ted Daniel with Boston 25 about John O'Keefe's family sitting inches away from her in the courtroom.
Do you feel the presence of the O'Keefe family behind you in court?
I honestly, I almost look through them. Paul's sitting there. Doesn't impact me. It doesn't bother me. That's John's brother. They've attempted to send me messages, and as soon as I see the name comes up, I just delete it.
So there is why is she doing the interview now, and what is this going to mean for her in the criminal trial coming up in April? Will some of this, is there anything there that could be shown to a jury that they might react to? Probably not. I mean, at this point in the case, there are some interviews that are going to make it into this trial. It sounds like that she did early on in this case that were not shown the first time around. Let's talk about it with the former head of the homicide unit in Norfolk County, Massachusetts, Mr. Richard Grundy. Good morning, sir. What's your take on Karen Read, this new interview, doing more talking as we see the retrial approaching very soon in April?
Well, good morning, Ted. I think this is just picking up kind of where they left off, or never really left off. There was certainly a trickle of it since the end of the first trial up until now. And that is to try the case in public. You know, anytime a person tells you repeatedly that they're not afraid of something, one thing you can be assured is they're afraid of it. They don't think it's going to be to their interests. And I don't think at this point in time, certainly Karen Read has any intention of testifying. If she didn't want to testify when Adam Lally was prosecuting the case, she certainly doesn't want to testify when Hank Brennan is trying the case. So this is, I think, when we hear of jury sullying or tampering, we think more of a Sopranos type thing where a juror gets visited at his place of work or on the way to his parked car. But just disseminating your plea of not guilty and outrage at the prosecution and summoning in the federal involvement in the investigation of this case repetitively, as we've seen when a case has this kind of media attention, gets to people. And that's kind of what led to that first trial being so, I believe, out of focus because everybody was responding to what the defendants had put out there publicly, not necessarily in the courtroom.
Here's a little bit more of what Karen told Boston 25 about John O'Keefe specifically. She said, I have very mixed feelings, you know, when I look back on John, because I see a lot of poor decisions that were all precursors to his death. She goes on to say he was near the road and he was dying, and I didn't think he was purposely put in that place at the time. This is about the federal case. She said the federal materials included a report that said there wasn't a car accident. That's 95% of this case. It wasn't just inconsistent. It was diametrically opposed to the Commonwealth's theory of the case. Richard, this case was a hung jury, and depending on the reporting on what the split was, it seemed, I mean, there's 10-2 was thrown out there. Even reports that the jury was unanimous in the top charge, that they agreed she was not guilty in. You add Michael Proctor into the mix, the despicable behavior that he had. Are you surprised the Commonwealth is coming back at her with such zeal, going out, getting Hank Brennan? And it just seems to be just real rancor here between a defendant and a government institution.
Am I surprised? No, I'm not. I think, it was patently obvious. This is not a problem unique to Massachusetts, and my titling it a problem. But, district attorneys are elected officials. We have not had a person who has a significant background or as a trial lawyer elected to the position of district attorney. So I think the layers of the onion were peeled away during that first trial, and it was exposed that the Commonwealth did a poor job, despite the result that I think many people were expecting to go other ways. So I think they kind of are tightened their belt and said, look, we did not put forth our best foot, and we need to do that, and they feel that they found a better path to do so. In addition to this individual case, people within the district attorney's office are looking at their own reputations, their own futures, political and otherwise. So I'm not surprised that this is going on. And we're seeing little things like the idea that their phone forensics, the defense's phone forensic expert, was not challenged at all with respect to his qualifications in the first trial is a huge red flag. Any trial lawyer will tell you.
That said, Judge Cannone is allowing the dog bite expert back in. Prosecution Commonwealth wanted her that expert bounced, and the cell phone expert from the defense that was the one opinion saying that search for how long does it die in the cold was done at 2 in the morning. The fact that this stuff's coming back in, you can fire Trooper Proctor or do whatever. He's coming back in some level, obviously, in what he did. Why is it that the Commonwealth thinks that just hiring a former mob attorney is going to turn this case around and we're going to win this time because Hank Brennan's going to save us just like he did Whitey Bulger, which he didn't?
But maybe the answer to that, Ted, is hope springs eternally. But I think they needed a stronger, more experienced foot placed forward, and apparently didn't believe that they could find that within their own office. And again, I think my perspective of this is that after making so many errant moves in that first trial, juries tend to get it. And in this case, it seemed that they got it, that Karen Reed was behind the wheel that struck the victim here, leading to his death. That is the other side of that coin. Dave Yanetti's opening statement and Karen's that I am being framed. They rejected that. The majority of the jury rejected that, even if we take into consideration what they supposedly unanimously reached a verdict on. So I think
so. Do you think to that point, Richard? Do you think to that point that the defense is maybe? Because I agree with you. The idea, it's one thing to defend your client and say that we don't know what happened, and that's there's reasonable doubt. It's reasonable doubt she's not guilty. They have a clear path to there. But they could make people really judge their case, and their case is pretty hard to completely take in and believe 100% that a lot of people are involved in a conspiracy to frame this woman, where, no one really knows what happened there. Maybe she hit him and he didn't, he was knocked out or something, and then maybe the snowplow got him. Maybe all these maybes, that works to the defense. But when you're saying, listen, jury, the Commonwealth is after my client, they conspired to frame her. That's a pretty big bar. That's a pretty big mountain to climb. Is it an error, in your opinion, for them to come back with the same zeal in round 2 that they had in round 1, basically saying the Commonwealth is after her?
So, one of the things that I think was really striking is that year of this media drumbeat as to this frame up and all the evidence that they were going to bring forth of the house being sold, the house being ripped apart, evidence being disposed of, we find out that the only experts they have were provided through the federal investigation. They were not prepared on their own to present any of those. The dog bite expert was sitting in California in her Barco lounger watching the trial when she came forward. So they were not prepared for the defense that they put forth. And yes, anytime a defense attorney steps up in front of the jury and says, I am going to prove to you, you lose a portion of that reasonable doubt, and it becomes a 50-50, pick a story, which one seems more likely.
Yeah, which could be a risk. We'll see. We're still a ways away, and they're still formulating their strategies, if you will. But boy, you say the name Karen Read, and people perk up because it's one of those cases that really has people's attention. Richard, as always, thank you.